So you are all welcome to the show. Well, it's not a show, but you're all welcome to the presentation, which is entitled "How Can Science and Religion Save the Beautiful Children of Mother Africa?" So as you can see, I've written here men at 60 plus. So men is Maushi Edinutako, but I think it's also all the men and all the human beings on the planet. When we turn 60, we need to think of leaving a legacy if you haven't already left one. So that is just a quick explanatory idea. Right, let's move to the first slide. The slides will work. Yes, I think so. Yes, so I'll need, okay, that's fine. I think I'll handle it myself. Yes, so in the title, we have 6 keywords, which I would like us to explore together. So one is science, then religion, then I've separated Mother Africa into Mother and Africa, children, and then the adjective beautiful. I think all of these words have meaning, or we can give each of them meaning, a deep meaning, which will help us to. So I'll just ask you quickly, which 3 words are most important to you in order of preference? So maybe in the chat, you can quickly type your 3 favorite words. Which of these words, which 3 of them do you think are the most, just rank 3 of them in order of preference, which are the most important, let's say, relative to the theme, saving Africa. Or, what does saving Africa? Yes, whatever you think it means. We'll come to that later. Okay. So 30 seconds to write down 3 words which you think are the most relevant in terms of what needs to be done in Africa. So I can see Africa, children. Okay, let me find the chat. So first, someone says, Africa, children, beautiful. Children, Africa, religion. Religion, mother, children. Religion, mother, children. Children, Africa, religion. Africa, children, beautiful. Beautiful, religion, science. Okay. So this is just a small teaser to make us reflect on these words. If you want to effect transformation, if you want to move Africa forward. Okay, so of course Africa is important, then mother, then children. Somebody says Africa, science, mother, science, religion, mother. Good. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. I hope everybody has had a chance to put in something there. So in the next slide, if it wants to turn, good. So, okay, my choice is mother. My choice is mother. So those of you who started with mother, maybe you have won a prize. We'll see that later. Did anybody start with mother? Let me see. Nobody started with mother. Nobody started with mother. Okay, good. So I like to contradict people all the time. So I think mother is the most important. And we have Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia, I think in Italian means my mother. So let's start with mother. I think all of them are important. Just let's start somewhere. The conversation can start somewhere. And 60 years ago, my mother, Margaret Kopi Bejira Nutako, was still pregnant at this point in time. Because I wasn't born yet, right? I was born at 11 p.m., I think, So mother is important because if she hadn't given birth to me, we wouldn't be here talking about this whole topic, right? So once again, please share a thought in the chat about mothers and what you think is their importance in our lives. either in Africa or in all over the world. What is the role, what is the importance of mothers in our lives? So let's just share 2 thoughts in the chat again. So just 30 seconds, 1 minute. So somebody says, mother is the first educator. The mother is the first educator. When the child is born, yeah, 99% of the time, the mother is the first educator. Somebody says, mothers and parents in general should make kids think anything is possible. Good. So that you motivate, empower kids, make them aware of their capabilities, their capacities to effect change and to make the world a better place. I'm interpreting what Nimi just said. Administrators of human life. Yes, they are managers of human life. Our first teachers, they bring us into the world. Yes, so these are all very wonderful ideas, which I think we all agree on. Mothers are unconditional lovers. And in fact, I've always thought that the love of a mother is the most unconditional form of love. Really, mothers are unconditional lovers. All the sacrifice and all the effort and energy which they put into the very difficult task of raising us. And I know, of course, each of us knows to what extent our mothers suffered. So I think God created Eve and women in general to make sure that all his children, all God's children, will receive a sound education. That's why God created Eve and I think women, to make sure that every generation of children will receive education, will be protected and nurtured. And that includes physical nourishment. Mothers start to give breast milk to children. And then talking to the child, they put in place, especially through language, his cognitive and intellectual capacities, with which the child will learn to, understand the environment, will learn about others, what we call significant others in sociology, and will learn things in general. Start going to school. All those things are based on the language, the depth and the richness of language which the mother is able to teach the child. Of course, very soon the father is in there, other members of the family and the community step in. But as we said, the first teacher is the mother. And the mother also inculcates spiritual powers and capacities or qualities into the child. And Louisa said mothers are unconditional lovers. And I think the first quality which mothers give to children is love. The first person the child loves is the mother. And the mother's unconditional love for the child is the first form of spiritual nourishment which the child needs, rather essentially to be able to survive. There are experiments in sociology where you see that children who are not touched, I think in Poland, they had an experiment, not an experiment, they observed children in an orphanage, and they realized that because there was nobody touching them and taking care of them, they didn't grow naturally like other children who have loving arms or caring parents taking care of them. So really the love of the mother is essential for the development, physical, intellectual, and spiritual of the child. So that is a very interesting, very important, So let's clap for all the women in the chat, and let's clap for all the women in our lives and in the world. Women have a powerful role to play. Yeah, my wife is clapping right here. Okay, so a high five to women, and then we go to the next slide, where I just display a quick photo of my mom. And African women, she's carrying our last born on her back. I think the last born, right? Yes, our last born on her back. She came to visit us in France. And to what extent mothers really love, somebody just said, essentially just said, mothers are the caretakers. So my mother traveled all the way from France to take care of her grandchildren. So that's just to showcase the importance of the role, this powerful role that mothers play. this role of education. We'll come back to that idea. So next slide. So naturally, between my mothers, let's talk about children. Children are probably the second element, which I think are really, really important in this quest for transformation in Africa and in the world in general. Of course, we are just targeting Africa, but I think the problems are the same, both in Africa and across the world. So the question is, what is the situation or the plight? Unfortunately, in many, many countries, we need to talk not about the situation, but the plight of children. So what is the situation or the plight of children where you live, in your community, in your country in general, under what conditions are children living? Let's say the majority of children. Maybe you can share some thoughts in the chat. Have you ever thought about that? Whether have you ever thought about the welfare of children in your community? How as adults we treat children in our communities, in our homes, how parents care or don't care for their children. So let's give a little thought to that. If we can share in there, once again, we can share some of those thoughts in the chat. What is the situation of children? I'm sure if I were to go into the statistics and give you statistics from the United Nations or UNESCO, you would see some rather, terrifying statistics about the conditions and the situation of children in many countries across the world, even in Western countries. But let's focus on Africa. What do you think is the situation or the plight of children in Africa? Any thoughts in the chat? Okay, moving on, because I'll see when I see the ideas, I'll read them. If any ideas come out there. Moving on, are the children in your area good? Good. Powerful question here. Do parents have time for their children? Do parents have time for children? And that is really a big question. How much time do we parents have for our children? We are busy so busy going to work, running after money, doing all sorts of things. And how much time do we have for children? Knowing that the amount of time, the amount of care, the amount of love that we offer to our children will be determinant of tomorrow's society. If our children are undernourished physically, intellectually, and spiritually, if our children are undernourished intellectually, physically, and spiritually, they will become malnourished adults, adults who will be selfish, adults who will be self-centered, adults who may be destructive of society, who may at least not be caring of society and its progress. So it is a real question. Do parents have time for children? Too much indoor screen time, too little quality interaction and exercise. More good role models would also help. Very strong idea from Germany with Louisa. And I think Santi says, at the moment, no hope. At the moment, there's no hope. Children lack parental love, says Bismarck. Children in London and East London in particular face very challenging times. Peer pressure to join gangs, some facing problems with lack of food due to current economic conditions. It is quite dangerous on the streets. So just imagine in London, this is what Sedina is telling us. The situation is not bright. The context is even dangerous for children. Children are not given the requisite skills to develop their talents. That's another very important idea. Children are not given the requisite skills, the requisite training and education to develop their talents. So if you look on the right of the screen, Ayikwe Ama, a very well-known Ghanaian author, wrote a book way back in the 60s, I think 1968, thereabouts. And he said, the beautiful ones are not yet born. The beautiful ones are not yet born. And so my question is, do you agree with that assertion? Do you think the beautiful ones are not yet born? And in any case, who are the beautiful ones? What is that referring to? Who are the beautiful ones? Is it the rich or the poor? Is it the black or the white? Is it girls or boys? Is it urban or rural? And all other kinds of categories. Who do we refer to as beautiful ones? Who are the precious ones? Who are the ones who have the most opportunities, the most maybe also responsibilities, etc., etc. These are questions which I think are worth our consideration, are worth our thoughts. So at least as far as I know, there's a Baha'i quotation which says that children are the most precious treasure of our communities. Children are the most precious treasure of our communities. And the future of our societies depends on how we take care of them today. If tomorrow the streets of London or the streets of Accra, the streets of New York are filled with gangsters, it's because today parents neglected the education of children. And so that is really pointing out to us, if we want to transform society, there's a lot we have to do for children and make sure that starting out, we equip them with the necessary tools, as Innocentia says, with the necessary talents, the love, the physical health, intellectual capacities, spiritual qualities that will make them useful human beings, useful citizens to themselves and to society tomorrow. So I want to go quickly through this and we can kind of talk a little bit amongst ourselves. Now, I think our world is in disarray. Today's world is in complete disarray. Africa and even beyond. I would say, like we used to say when we were kids, there was this song we used to sing, there's a fire on the mountain, run, run, run. There's a fire on the mountain, run, run, run. And today, often when I go out into the communities, I tell the friends, listen, why do you think I'm here? There's a fire. Our homes are burning and we're sitting down unconcerned. And people say, yeah, but no, what are you talking about? What fire? We don't see any fire, but there's a fire of poverty and injustice. There's a fire of corruption and ignorance, tribalism, racial and antipathy, racial, like in America, racial tensions, apathy, conflict, war, Ukraine, Russia. I don't want to depress you, so let's stop. Let's stop over there. And these are things which are destroying the very fabric of society today. There are three main things: inequality, exploitation, and oppression. These things are keeping African societies back. Inequality, exploitation, and oppression. Men and women. Men are oppressing women. Men are exploiting women. And women are in situations of inequality. The rich are exploiting and oppressing the poor. And the poor are in that situation of inequality, financially, etc. Strong nations are oppressing and exploiting weak nations, blacks and whites. Maybe whites are oppressing blacks, etc., etc. So these are rather sad words to use, but I think that is the context in which much of the world, but also especially Africa, is operating. Now, what can science help us to do? How can science save us from such, a situation? Well, what words come to mind when we say, how can science save the world? So before I share my thoughts, what do you want to maybe put a few words in the chat? How do you think science can salvage the situation I just described? Poverty, injustice, corruption, ignorance, tribalism and race, apathy, conflict, inequality, exploitation, oppression. What would be the role of science in, helping us to go beyond or to solve some of these situations. Much information is available readily on the internet. So that is technology, the ability of technology to give us good information. And even then we need to navigate between fake news and good news. Today, sometimes you go on the internet and you don't know what you are reading, who put it there and why they put it there. So of course, the internet has much information, but we also have to equip our children maybe with the capacity to navigate, to discern, to understand, to choose. Does science include social science like history? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Science in general is the ability of the human to use the mind, to use the intellect to discover and understand nature. So whether it's social nature, physical nature, it's all science. Science involves careful observation, reflection, analysis, and drawing conclusions. And this is a human capacity. It's not only the scientist anyway who is a scientist. Even a 5-year-old or a 3-year-old is a scientist. Just look at all the questions they ask you. Think back to the questions your kids were asking you when they were 3, 4, 5. That is a scientific mind. Unfortunately, I'm digressing a bit, but in Africa, we start to shut down those scientific minds by telling them, keep quiet, you ask too many questions. Keep quiet, you ask too many questions. You know, so our kids grow up thinking that it is impolite to ask questions, you know, but we are killing their scientific minds. Does science include, voila, I just answered, innovation. Innovation is a way science can help us to solve some of these problems, stick to trusted sources. Okay, we have to teach our kids how to find. So in general, I would say that, and I think I'll just move to the next slide, which says that education. So let's say formal science is God's perfect plan for the betterment of mankind through nature. Yay, that's a bright one from Asante. Science is God's perfect plan for the betterment of mankind through nature. So through our understanding and mastery of nature, through science, then we can improve the society. I think that is really on track. What Asante just put out there is really, really interesting. We need to rewrite history, give acknowledgement to the contributions of Africans. Yes, it's I've seen here and there that the names of Africans and also some Black Americans are more or less deliberately blotted out from history books. Their contributions to mathematics and science, and even women also. Lots of women have had their contributions to knowledge and science blotted out by our rather misogynistic and patriarchal society. So we really do need to rewrite history. Education using technology. So the word education, yes, that's essential. The word education comes up. Now in the Baha'i faith, and I'll be drawing a bit on the Baha'i faith, so just indulge me. That is my source of understanding and reflection on things, you know, which I find important. So Baha'u'llah in the Baha'i faith says, regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. And he says, education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. Education can alone cause man to reveal those hidden treasures and enable the whole of mankind, to enable humanity to benefit therefrom. So this underscores the importance of education. And so here I'm talking about, you know, school education, academic education, science, arts, literature, language. Language is just so important. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a linguist, but language is really at the basis of all learning. Without language, you can't learn, you can't communicate, you can't even think. You can just maybe have images going through your mind or emotions split into your mind. Without language, you cannot really be a human being. You cannot be a learner, you cannot be a scientist, you cannot scientist in the broad sense of the term. So underscoring the importance of education, which alone can really bring out the power inherent in the human mind. And so scientific education is therefore one really powerful source of that. So scientific and intellectual education, yes, scientific and intellectual education has that power to educate the human mind. Ignorance is a terrible plight. Superstition is another difficult thing. But ignorance, or just lack of the capacity to understand, lack of capacity to analyze. Can you imagine that by the age of 27, I think, when I got to France, I didn't have any proper definition for the word analysis. I went to France, I started my university studies there. I was studying a master's degree, and then this word came up, analysis. And I said, hey, what does this word really mean? Can you imagine? After all my education in Ghana, through university, I hadn't given proper thought to the word analysis. Maybe just vaguely, I could have given you some answer, but I had no real mastery. At no point could I say, okay, I'm going to analyze this one. And analysis means that I'm going to break the thing into its component parts and see what the interaction, the interrelationship between the different parts. This wasn't something, a concept I had in my mind. Maybe I was a bad student, but at least I had gone through some years of schooling. And if the schooling system was good, even a bad student should have had some notion of that word. So scientific and intellectual education, capacity to think, to observe, to eliminate prejudice, to put aside preconceptions, to have an open mind, to analyze, be critically analytical. Those are powerful concepts which science must give to us. So that even if I, so I should have a scientific mind. Everybody, whether it's art or science or whoever we are, we should have scientific minds, the capacity to observe and then ask questions, interrogate, analyze, experiment if needed, and then come out with maybe data or results or analysis or what do you call it, conclusions, etc. That process is just human. It is not scientific, it is human. Every child, every youth should be fully, conversant with that kind of thing. Okay. Sometimes you are preaching to the, what do you say? Preaching to the converted. So let's go a bit faster. I think you all know all these things. I'm just putting a few words on them. And then another aspect of education is spiritual and moral education. This is where religion comes in. So religion brings us spirituality. It brings us the light of God. It brings us love. It brings us patience. It brings us knowledge, understanding, perception, and a whole host of powerful qualities that are needed for human society, both individual and collective, to progress. Now, just imagine, let me ask you a simple question. If you had to employ an A level and a top level accountant, he had top A's in his accounting degree and everything, and then somebody told you, oh, he's bright, he's brilliant, but he's a bit dishonest. He's not very, he's a bit dishonest. Then it's okay, there's this other accountant, okay, he came out with the B, but he's honest, tip-top honest, and so you have to employ one of them to take care of your last $10,000 which you want to invest into a business. Which one would you employ? Would you employ the one with the A and dishonest, or would you take the one who came out with B or even a C, but he's very, very honest? Which of these accountants would you employ? So please put this in the chat. Would you take accountant A or accountant B? So B is the one, who is not so strong. Everybody is saying the honest one, accountant B. So you realize that spiritual and moral education are essential for individual, collective, and individual progress. And the situation, however, is that most of the time we give precedence to intellectual and scientific prowess. We say, oh, this man is sharp, he's good, he's intelligent, etc. But we forget about the spiritual and moral aspects. And for example, a few years ago, I was working with USAID on the project in the Ghana Education Service. And they would not allow us to introduce a moral education component into the project. they just simply couldn't understand what was the need for introducing a moral education component into the training of teachers who are going to train our children in school. And this is baffling. So they say checks and balances, counter whatever, that, you know, using these big words, accountability. Even accountability is not a bad word. And then things like, you know, some of the words are, you know, I'm 16 now, so my mind is a bit muddled. I keep on forgetting my things, you know. I'll soon start talking nonsense in a few minutes. So anyway, just to put the jokes aside, the American, the US age project would not, you know, countenance this idea of moral education. And that is one of the big problems in our societies today. Okay, I think you all know what I'm talking about. Let's move on to the next slide. So my diagnosis of African problems is twofold. The first problem, I think, is simply moral decadence and materialism. I think in Africa, we are becoming morally decadent and materialistic. Today, you ask a young person in the street, what's the road to, let's say, the post office? And as soon as they show you the road, they reach out, they hold out their hands and they're asking you for money. So nobody can render service without asking for money. The smallest child who sees you walking by will be asking you for money. I was walking in a village just 2 or 3 days ago, and there were 3 little kids on the side of the road. They were singing, "Hello, sir, I want 1 cedi. Hello, sir, I want 1 cedi." And there was this slightly older boy, but he's about 8, and the other kids were about 4 or 5. And I realized that he taught them that song to sing as they saw me passing by. So I walked towards them and I told the boy, "Listen, that song you are teaching them is not good. You are teaching them to be beggars already. So don't teach them that song." And he said, okay, sir. But you can see what the problem is. All right. This materialism, everything, kids, young people, thinking only of money and forgetting that effort and maybe good character and all those things are also important in life and things like that. Moral decadence, I don't really want to go in there. Our society is just going downhill. I was telling my wife the other day, this beautiful picture we had of Africa, the old people are wise, the society is harmonious, there is beauty all over the place. That's folk tale, mythical Africa is vanishing at an alarming pace. You go to the villages, you go around, and you don't see. I don't know where the wisdom is. I don't know where the what do you call it? The good character and the even the taboos are vanishing. The taboos that used to keep people in check, are all vanishing. Anyways, and so I think that the solution is, of course, spiritual and moral empowerment. It is really imperative for school systems, families, parents to be given, to have their capacity built to offer spiritual and moral education to their children. Otherwise, our society is doomed. All the issues we talk about. I was reading a JICA article on how the Japanese think they can help in the areas in which Japanese think they can help Africa. So JICA is the Japan International Cooperation Agency or something like that. And one of the key areas they talk about is education. They talk about infrastructure, they talk about governance, etc., etc. But one of the key areas is education. And then they talk about resilience. I think it's the word which many people are throwing around nowadays. I think above and beyond all those, especially when we pick out education, spiritual and moral education is really vital. The second problem, I think, is cultural and intellectual alienation. Cultural and intellectual alienation. And that has to do with the identity of the African. Now, I was reading something where some girls had been saved or recaptured from Boko Haram in Nigeria. And one of the girls was saying that when they went into the Boko Haram camp, these terrorists or these extremists were telling them that they don't want Africans to follow Western education. And then a girl who had been released from captivity said, "Oh, but we want Western education. We want to go to school. We want Western education." And I thought to myself, and I said, "Well, I mean, of course, Boko Haram is not an ideology I'm going to support or defend, but honestly, we need to take a second look at this so-called Western education and the way it is used and has been used in Africa since pre-colonial and colonial times and afterwards. The system, its content, right, is alien and alienating. And there's a powerful book written by one Professor Nketia, which I will encourage all of us to read, which shows the extent to which our current educational system is causing more harm than good to the African psyche. And so we need a cultural and intellectual revolution in Africa to make sure that our identity is solidly established and based on cultural, spiritual values that make us a self-respecting people, independent-minded, able to look at our own environment and use it for the development of our own communities and nations, able to detect whatever problems we have and find our own homemade solutions to those problems. And in fact, the JICA, one of the points in the JICA, is it JICA? It's G-I-C-A, right? In Japanese, yeah, JICA. One of the points in it was saying that Africans should be given the opportunity or the space to have their own homegrown solutions, to have their own solutions to the problems in the continent. And from the Baha'i point of view, for example, it is our social economic development project is based on the principle that development is not something one person can come and do for somebody else. Americans can come and develop Africa for us. Ghana cannot go and develop Togo. Each person has the God-given capacity to participate in the generation of knowledge and its application. So the knowledge generated in America is good and is fine for America, but you can't transport it into Africa and think that one, it will work, or two, the Africans don't have anything better to do than sit down and wait for somebody else's processes to be imported and imposed upon them. Anyway, I don't want to go too much into details. So my second solution is that we need a radical transformation of the educational system in Africa. And these two paradigms are, I think, essential pathways towards solving some of the endemic problems on the continent. Now, next slide. So, what do I want to do about all this? So the project I have in mind now is what I call an educational project based on both science and religion. So, I mean, the philosophical underpinnings are quite vast, but more concretely, I'm thinking that, for example, in the village area where I've been going to help with community building, trying to help the youth and the children and the community to reflect on their own environment, on their own situation, etc. I think there's a need in schools, in the communities, to put in place a complementary educational support scheme that can help children and youth to connect their academic and moral education to their cultural and physical environment. So children and youth should be helped, their capacity should be built, so that they can connect what they're learning in school, as well as some components of moral education. We Baha'is often go in there to offer moral education. We can combine that moral education with the academic knowledge being given. We are not going to be able to change all the textbooks tomorrow. So whatever textbook we have in there, whatever content we have in there, let's combine that with some scientific, some moral education, but let's find a way to connect it to be relevant to the culture of the people and their physical environment, so that at least the alienation can be resolved, the disconnections can be overcome. Now, this will involve providing practical interventions to help teachers and students reorient the minds of the African child in the African context reorient the minds of the African child to the African context. You can't teach him about aeroplanes and submarines and things which he will never come across, or which 90% of them will never come across in their lives. And never tell them what cassava, what maybe little poison there is in cassava, or how to make manure from the chickens that are running around in his environment. So whatever they're learning in class, we need to find ways to connect it to their context, their local context and environment. And then help them to find solutions to problems which they themselves perceive, needs which they themselves can identify, using local resources, their own talents, and their own capacities. Development doesn't mean that somebody will come from somewhere and tell them that you people need a well. You need, I don't know, a roof over your head, and you need so and so. I mean, what kind of story is that telling of the people who are there? When you come from somewhere to come and tell them that this is what you need, these are the problems in your place. I think it's better to build their capacity from childhood to be able to find problems and to be problem solvers, confident in themselves and in their capacity to harness the resources of their environment, etc., to bring about change and progress in their own environment, in their own communities. So this, for example, will stop the brain drain from rural to urban. If children realize that what they're learning in school can really help them to tackle the problems in the environment, then they don't all want to run away to Accra, and those in Accra want to run away to London, and maybe those in London want to run away to America, and those in America want to run away to the moon or to Mars. Then at the end of the day, we'll leave the planet here empty so that the goat and the sheep will have some fun. Now, we need to make school relevant to life, environment, especially in rural areas. I am more concerned about rural areas, which I spent a lot of time. I had the privilege and the pleasure of taking Nimi along with me to some rural areas. And I think she enjoyed the trip. We went on a boat ride on the river. She saw the children and things like that. And yes, that was a nice thing. So we need to promote biliteracy. As a linguist, as a social linguist, I think biliteracy, children should learn their local language and English. That was the object of my doctoral thesis. The need for children, that was my conclusion anyway, that children don't need to learn French. For a French teacher doing a French thesis, I told them that we don't need to learn French. We need to learn our local language and we need to learn English. That is a priority. After that, okay, we can learn Chinese or Spanish or French, doesn't matter which. And then, so we need to promote biliteracy. I don't want to go too much into details. Another conference may be needed to talk about this idea of local language, etc. And then, of course, I spend my time, and I think it's important to promote the Baha'i children and junior youth educational processes, which are also akin to what other organizations are doing. But what I know best is what the Baha'is are trying to do to encourage the development of moral capabilities among the youth. Next slide. So, yeah, so I said we took Nimi out. We have a piece of land in a district of the Volta region called North Tong, and we have what we call the Tanya Ranch. So in partnership with our very dear friend, Mr. Dennis Hunter, who we also call Mr. Wofayao. So we are trying to build a small learning center for children and youth to come and see models of what can be done in school, at home, and in the community, as outlined in the above discussion I've just presented. They will see how, for example, I don't know whether I included some of the examples in the next slide. Okay, no. Yeah, so they'll see, for example, how maybe to build a compost. From their science book, whether it's agricultural book or biology book, they can come and see how to build a compost, maybe on the school campus or at home. How to sort out garbage, how to maybe use the solar panels to generate electricity. I mean, simple things, but which will help them to connect what they're learning in those books theoretically to things they can really do in their environment. I took a science book and I took a look at it, and it says, go out into your environment and find maybe a piece of wire, an LED light, a battery, and something, and create a circuit. And I thought, oh my God, where is this child going to find just those simple things in his environment? He will never find an LED light. he won't find a wire, he won't find a battery and be able to actually construct what do you call it? A circuit, right? In 80% of the villages in Ghana, I think it's impossible for the children to find these things. So we have to change, maybe not change with the content, but at least find a way of moving from that content to something more feasible, more applicable in their environment. So anyway, we'll set up this center for learning on the Tani Ranch, and reflect and see how we can come up with, a way of doing this. Okay, next slide. Probably just a few pictures. This is Nimi on the Volta Lake, and I can see she really enjoyed our visit. And then the pictures are just in the order. These are some of the kids we work with in this North Tong district. These children want to learn. This is Saturday and Sunday. They don't want to go and play around. As soon as they see us, they run and come. We want to learn. We want to learn. And so, see the little girl there with her friends writing. So this is Tani Ranch. So far, we have put up a few pillars, and we are hoping to to move on. You can see Dennis Hunter on the left and my dear wife on the right. And then these are the children. We go to the justice of these simple maths. Look at their bright eyes, looking up and waiting for you to say something to them. They are just eager. They want to learn. And so we are training some of these youth in this picture here. The one in blue is called Lord. The one in the white blouse and the black skirt is called Christiana. There's a lady behind there called Florence. These are people in this small village. Some of them are the mothers of these children. And we are training them, trying to build their capacity in different ways to be able to guide the youth in their own community. So same picture here. I hope are the pictures coming across nicely? Yes, okay. And then, so that is Auntie Cecile in action, trying to animate the class. So Nini says, yes, great trip to Volta River Village and great efforts by Eddie and Cecile, even though I am not religious. What they are teaching made sense, simple efforts, but takes a lot of dedication, a lot of their precious time. Many of the girls were busy fetching water while we were there and would probably prefer to learn a simple pump to pump the water with free time for other things. Yes, Nini is right on track. And then I wanted to put this slide at the very end to say that it's a long road to success, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. So this should really be the last picture, but it's found this somewhere in the middle here. So these are some of the youth in the village, and they come, they listen, their mothers, the children come with them. We have these red books. We use their ideas from the Baha'i Community, which help them to reflect on their reality and on the capacities they need to build to be able to converse with others, to be able to help the children build their capacities and things like that. So this is more or less the moral component, internal motivation aspect. The other aspect, of course, is the academic component, which I've also talked about. And then I know, and this is also a slide that should come at the end, but I know that in 60 years' time, when I pass away, my granddaughter, Efe here, will be ready to take over and continue the work at the Efe Ranch. And talking about cultural alienation, we organize in the schools a dance troupe. Whenever we have activities, we organize dance troupes. Next time Nini comes, I promise we'll go and bring a dance troupe to welcome her, even at the airport. And then, so, these girls are wonderful dancers, and the boys are wonderful drummers. But some of these things seem to be on the outside of our lives, and on the periphery. Is it a periphery? Whatever. Periphery, yes. So here, Dennis is planting some trees. So tree planting is an important thing, at the Efe Ranch, at the Tani Ranch. And here is Auntie Cecile and a dear friend I always called Precious, who is also planting. What is this? We are planting trees. So tree planting, all these activities are things that the kids will come and learn and stuff like that. And I think that is the end. So if you copy, I'll copy this WhatsApp. Anyway, I think I don't need to do that. There's a WhatsApp page I've created to provide information on what we're doing at the Tani Ranch. So using tech, tech is a slogan I will use in part of our work. It's terrific education to change humanity. So for me, terrific education is composed of spiritual, moral, as well as intellectual and scientific education. And all the friends here, you are invited, some of you are invited to join our ABEST, which is the Advisory Board for Educational Specialists for Transformation. So if you're interested in education, if you want to continue the dialogue with us, so we can continue the conversation. Currently, I'm also on the board of directors for what we call the Olenga Foundation for Human Development, which is an organization in Ghana here, led by our dear friend, Dr. Leslie Hayford, which trains teachers in the Ghana Education Service to teach reading, to P1 to P4, P3, P4 kids. No, rather P4 to P6 kids. But a startling statistic I will give you just to end the talk is that in Ghana, barely 3% of children in P2, P3, primary 2, primary 3, barely 3% of these children across the country are capable of reading at age level in either English or local language. Our kids in Ghana do not know how to read simple English, like just sounding out words, ba, da, ka, fu, mama, in English, in local language, or sounding out little 2-letter, 3-letter words in English. That is what is happening in Ghana. And I think some of the ideas I presented are pathways to solving and moving this country forward. Small things at a local community level, involving children, teachers, parents, the community, including science, moral education, harnessing local resources. When the help is needed from outside, of course, help will come from outside. But first of all, people on the ground should build their capacity to know who they are, what they can do, and how to start doing something. So, dear friends,